Okay, welcome back, everybody. We've got another great conversation for Opening Acts around VMworld 2020. As usual, if you're not in the Orbital Jigsaw Discord channel, that's a great place to go and be part of the community, have discussions specifically around this one video, as well as a bunch of other VMworld content that's going around out there. So I would highly recommend you go out there. You can also feed us questions that way. If you bring up some questions, or we've got people watching to feed it to me. So this session, what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation with one of our great sponsors. So VM Underground / Opening Acts is all sponsor based. We do what we do because of sponsors. So Zerto is one of our sponsors this year. Back after being gone a few years, but used to be one of our early sponsors back in the day. So super excited to have Zerto back. And what we're going to talk about over the next half hour or so here is just kind of a interview style conversation with a couple of Zerto employees about what they have going on, kind of the state of the industry at this point, and what some advice around how to deal with the pandemic and whatnot. So before we get into that, I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves real quick so that you know who they are and kind of where they're coming from, and then we'll dive right in. So Mike, I'll have you go first.
Okay. So Mike Martino, I've been at Zerto for 3 years. Before that, I was a customer. Before that, I was a partner. So I think I've been around the block a little bit. But I work as a sales engineer in Northeast U.S. I'm based out of New York, New Jersey area. And yeah, that's my story. I'm also a VMUG co-leader and vExpert.
Awesome.
I'll take over. So my name is Gijsbert Jansen van Doorn. I'm Director of Technical Marketing at Zerto. Been with Zerto for a little over 5 years now, 5.5 years now. Started out as a sales engineer for the Benelux Nordics region, and then moved to what some people might call the dark side, but moved to technical marketing. Before that, I actually used to work with someone you might know as well, Mike Letchin at Nexenta, a software-defined storage company. But been in the IT infrastructure business basically ever since I touched IT, which is now like 20 years ago. and happy to be back at VM Underground, actually.
Yeah, it's different this year for sure. Not quite the experience that we were used to, but we scrambled just like everyone else has done and tried to figure out what was going to work well for everybody. And so hopefully everybody kind of finds this useful. We've got several people in the stream watching us, so let's give them something good to talk about. So I guess let's start off just kind of really the most basic. If people don't know who Zerto is or the services and products that you all offer, can you guys give us a quick overview of kind of what you offer as a company?
Sure, absolutely. Well, let me start a little bit with how we started out. So we started back in 2011 with version 1.0 of our product, which basically is a software-based solution that offers replication with integrated orchestration and automation to solve for disaster recovery use cases on top of VMware platforms. Now, we're actually just about to release 8.5 of our product, so we had quite the number of iterations. And during that, we've added more than just features and capabilities to the product to solve for disaster recovery, but we're now also moving into the more data protection backup space. So you can really look at Zerto as being a software-based layer using a scale-out architecture that sits between your applications and your infrastructure and allows you to protect your applications, your VMs, move them, and besides supporting all kinds of different VMware platforms, including vCloud Director, we also support clouds like Azure Native, AWS, but we also have a network of 450 plus MSPs that actually use Zerto as the core of how they deliver certain services, like DR as a service. So we've started as a product doing DR, and we're now a platform that basically covers everything you need to mobilize and protect your applications running on the cloud or on a virtual infrastructure.
Great. Yeah, and I know as a cloud vendor that I work for a day job, we use Zerto and have seen really great success with customers using that. So great technology for sure. So I kind of want to start with the virtual aspect of things. The 800-pound gorilla in the corner. VMworld's all virtual. Which has some good parts and some bad parts. I mean, a lot more people are able to join VMworld that never have been able to before, to engage with people, not just watch the videos after the fact. And I'm assuming as part of VMworld, you guys have some new product offerings. VMworld's the time of year where everybody kind of releases their new versions or announces something big that's coming soon. You kind of alluded to a new version coming out. Why don't you give us a quick summary of what you have coming up soon?
So sure. So it's version 8.5, which doesn't sound like a major release, but actually is. And there's a couple of things we do in there. One is we used to basically offer our software solution packaged in what we called Enterprise Cloud Edition, which basically allows you to use everything you can use with our product. So that's replication into the cloud, long-term retention, all the features, all the workflows. But what we've seen is that as we move into more the data protection space, is that people need a different type of packaging. They need a more flexible way of using and deploying the product. So we're actually releasing a new data protection offering that allows you to do local continuous backup using our CDP engine, has data protection workflows versus the more failover test disaster recovery workflows, and offers long-term retention, including support for using the cloud as a long-term retention target. But like I said, we have a platform, and there are many things that we've done to actually improve our platform. One of them is every single component within Zerto now is fully encrypted. So all the communication between our different components, the management components, you name it, but also the replication traffic is now encrypted. We've added deeper integration with vCenter and added like cluster management. So like I said, we have a scale-out architecture using our replication appliances, and they're deployed on every host in your vCenter cluster or vSphere cluster. So you can now manage that cluster. So whenever a host leaves that cluster or enters that cluster, it automatically gets a virtual replication appliance installed. We added platform automation, things like auto-populate, auto-evacuate, really to simplify the ongoing maintenance tasks when you're managing your environment. So take a host into maintenance, get it out of maintenance, automatically distribute that workload from a recovery perspective. So that's all built into the platform, basically making it easier to manage those large-scale environments. There's so many things. We started to support many of the VMware Cloud verified solutions, like Oracle. So Oracle has Oracle VMware solutions, so we certified that. We now support Google Cloud VMware Engine. I have to memorize all these different products. Azure VMware solution, and they have a new generation coming up from Azure VMware solution, which we now also support. So if you look at our platform and how we support native clouds as in Azure and AWS, we now started to support that whole VMware Cloud verified ecosystem as well, really basically allowing you to move your workloads, your VMs wherever you go. Now, one interesting piece, and I won't be talking about that a lot, but what we actually announced at one of our very first virtual events, ZertoCon last June.
You wanted to say last year, didn't you?
I want almost, yes.
Feels like
make it last year because that was a better year, or make it next year to skip 2020. We pre-announced Zerto for Kubernetes. So for us, it's really interesting to see what's happening with Tanzu, what's the response of the people at VMworld, and because Tanzu will be a platform we support with Zerto for Kubernetes as well. So that's definitely something we hopefully can talk to some of the people that attend VMworld as well.
Yeah, I think
Did I miss any? Oh, sorry. Did I miss anything, Mike?
No, that's a good summary.
I think I summed it up.
Yeah, that wasn't enough. You want more? Yeah, I mean that's a significant body of effort that's going into a dot release. A lot of people look at only the major releases as being the big ones that they really need to focus on, and the smaller ones they could just slip in whenever. I know VMware has been notorious at trying to kind of break that. Sometimes it feels like, because they do .5s and .1s quite often that are pretty big. And there's even been a few
update one.
A few of the service pack update type updates that introduce some pretty significant stuff in there. So definitely not to be ignored just because it's a .5 release. Really like the encryption aspect of things. That's definitely I'm sure a hot discussed one. Kubernetes is of course looking more to the future than, I guess. You guys get a lot of customers asking about failover for Kubernetes, or is that something just trying to stay ahead of demand on that front?
It's a little bit of both. We do notice that even though it feels like we've been talking about Kubernetes for ages, it's still pretty early days. A lot of organizations we talk to struggle with how to deploy it, what to use, how to do data protection. But another thing is, I think when you look at the Kubernetes ecosystem right now, and specifically when you look at data protection, it really seems like we're back at how data protection started for VMware. Basically, let's solve it in a different layer. Let's solve it in the infrastructure layer, and we then somehow integrate it within Kubernetes and make it work. What Zerto really tries to do is really abstract that and look at it from a Kubernetes platform perspective, and really integrate natively into it, giving you all that freedom of choice. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Tanzu, but for example, what we see, and this is actually one of our early adopter customers is doing that right now, is the developers doing it, develop in the cloud. They use EKS, Amazon EKS, to develop it. But then if they take it into production, it actually has to be moved to an on-prem environment that's managed by them, that has all the storage systems and hosts that can deliver the SLAs, the number of nines they want. And they can actually use Zerto for that, because we're platform agnostic, so we support multiple platforms.
So when you're failing over that Kubernetes environment, are you failing over the individual instances? Is it the base images? Is it the configuration? What all gets pulled over for that?
So basically we integrate with Kubernetes. So what we do is we don't need to replicate anything stateless. So the thing we replicate is actually the persistent volumes within Kubernetes. And once we recover, we basically look at the YAML file of that application and deploy anything that's needed to actually get that application up and running. So we're talking stateful sets, we're talking services, we're talking daemon sets, everything you need to get that Kubernetes application up and running. So we protect the persistent data, but we recover the application with all its Kubernetes entities, regardless of where you recover it to.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so moving on a little bit, with VMworld being virtual, and you mentioned ZertoCon having been one of the early virtual events, was actually went really well. I was actually impressed. ZertoCon was the first virtual conference I went to after the pandemic happened, and I was actually pretty impressed with the level of engagement and everything that was going on there. But I'd like to know kind of how you both as a company with ZertoCon and VMworld and others that you come to, but also as individuals, how you've been dealing with this move to virtual. We actually had a conversation earlier, was our first panel this morning, around the hallway track and how to do that. But I'm curious from both of your perspectives, what you would advise people, kind of what you've seen and what you advise people to do to best engage.
Mike, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the difference in software back in March and where some of the software is now, as far as being able to do recordings, being able to do live streaming. I mean, I didn't download it for this particular platform, but I mean, everyone's got some kind of camera app that gives them a different background or distorts their background, and I chose to not have either one of them. So this is my actual background. So some of those things, I mean, you probably never would have thought like Zoom would have a potato that you can pretend to be. It's just interesting how the software has kind of evolved, and it had to, because, you know, we suddenly had this new normal where everyone's got to do this, and it's got to be reliable. It's got to have enough features that everybody needs to pull off and be able to communicate a message. And I think that's kind of one of the big differences. Is I think we did ours in June, thankfully, so we had a little bit of time for some of the technology to keep up. But yeah, there's a big appreciation for what goes behind the scenes now, especially when you switch from live to virtual. A lot of things you don't think about, a lot of things that everyone's learning at the same time in different ways. And yeah, I think that's just the difference. Is just you got to give yourself time to learn something new, practice it a little bit, and then it'll just be like anything else you've done.
Yeah, sounds great.
No, I absolutely agree. I was closely involved with ZertoCon and going virtual and looking at platforms and delivering content. And I'll be honest, it was a struggle. We had to switch to pre-recording. We were always really want to engage with customers. So now all of a sudden we need to have those customers record as well, cut and paste it together. It was really a challenge. But when I look at ZertoCon and you have attended it, a lot of lessons learned. There's so many things we can improve, but the audience we got, the number of people online was amazing, overwhelming, tough at times, but it allowed us to reach such a broader audience. What turns out for me is recording presentations, all of a sudden they take 20 minutes less because I don't have that interaction with the audience.
Yeah.
When I present, I like questions. I like interaction. I like to look at how people respond, and maybe sometimes when I say things and then you see people look like, I'm not sure if he's right. I like to challenge them. And that makes it fun, and you miss that with online. I think what I noticed is that, and I didn't expect that the chat features within those different platforms, they explode. I didn't imagine so many people to interact, to give feedback, some good, some bad, but that's good. Keep it coming.
It was definitely a challenge to keep up with the questions, because it had the function to say, oh, someone asked a question, put an answer right under it so it stays together. And next thing you know, like they went, it was too late. By the time you were able to write a meaningful, thoughtful answer, it was gone.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I think chat platforms, maybe they've caught up a little bit to that, but initially I think they thought, oh, that's good enough. But yeah, ZertoCon with the participants and everybody, blowing our minds as far as expectations. Yeah, that was a little challenging to try to keep up with questions like that.
So I absolutely agree. I think that would be one tip. Have a lot of chat rooms with specific subjects and specific subject matter experts to make it a little bit more manageable, both from an attendee perspective as from a moderator / someone behind the scene that answers those questions.
And I have another hot tip too. If you're a first-time recorder, give yourself a little bit more time. I know, Heisey, you've done this a million times, so you have 20 minutes less. But for me, it took me, let's just not say it was just 20 minutes more. It was probably like 2 hours more, because you talk about challenging presenter in a positive way. But me, I was challenging myself, and it almost became negative. Like, oh, why did I say it that way? And then it's like, stop, re-record, but you have to re-record from the beginning.
Yep.
Unless you have software that can, let you, recover midstream. So yeah, forgive yourself a little bit and allow for a little bit more time. That's my tip for anybody who's doing this for the first time. It's gonna take a little bit longer than you expect to get used to it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. That's been my experience recording videos. A friend of mine over at VMware was lamenting the number of sessions he had to do and how much more difficult it is to give a recorded, you think recording would be easier, you do it whenever you want and you're done with it, but you analyze every little thing you say and you want to edit every little thing you say. And like I said, Mike, it's go back and re-record the whole thing. And that's been my experience as well. So in some ways it makes it a lot more stressful than just practice, and then go up there and just do it live. And then you also lose out on that interactivity that you get. And I'm the same way. I try to keep it interactive because you don't want people falling asleep during your session. So keep it interactive, keep it entertaining, keep them engaged throughout the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, I was manning a booth or helping to man a booth as well as running around trying to learn and community stuff and whatnot during ZertoCon. And one of the things I found kind of interesting was the way that Zerto had kind of gamified the conversation aspect of things. Like they seem to do a really good job of getting people to come to the vendor booths, which honestly, I've been doing online events, the virtual VMUG user cons and things like that for several years. And manning a booth is the worst. It's the absolute worst job of an entire virtual conference because people don't want to come just to, they stop and they say hi, they leave. So getting meaningful conversation can be tough. So I guess my advice would be if anybody is interested talking to any of the vendors like Zerto, go there. They're just sitting there waiting for someone to talk to. You'll get pretty good attention in that scenario. I don't know if you guys would agree with that or not, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, I think the gamification we used was both a blessing and somewhat of a pain as well, because we worked with a point system. People were really focused on points, but it did do a good job in getting people at our because we use sponsors as well, but and partners to get the people at their booth. So it did work.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of challenges with them. I guess looking at next year, I'm assuming there'll be a ZertoCon again next year. Is it, I'm assuming right now you're kind of in this planning state of, well, we should probably plan for both because either in person or online could be a possibility. If it does end up going online again next year, I guess what pieces of advice are you giving internally? What changes do you expect could be happening there?
I think one, which I just mentioned, is split up in more subject-based or expertise-based rooms where people can really get a subject matter expert to actually answer questions and not scroll back to that question and then try to answer it.
Yeah.
So get a little bit more interaction. The other one is and learn the platform, but I think we learned many things from the platform we use and how to avoid some of the things we had happening at ZertoCon virtual this year. From an attendee perspective, for ZertoCon specifically, I'd say join us. But I think one of the struggle I have with any virtual conference is how do I keep my focus? I mean, when I'm at VMworld, I'm at VMworld. I'm there. But with this virtual thing going on, I've attended a few, and what I had to do was turn off notifications on my phone, turn off email, turn off chat, make sure I can focus and I can interact, because the distraction is huge. Yeah. Don't use a second screen. Use one screen where you can focus on that. At least that works for me. Because that's the hardest part of doing a virtual conference.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. The focus aspect, because the whole point of going somewhere to a conference is you immerse yourself and skills for immersing yourself are quite different in the virtual versus the physical. Physical, you just have to physically travel to a conference, and then it kind of takes care of itself. But at home, especially the distractions, you have to, deal with the human distractions. Make sure that if something's important to you, you tell your, whoever else is in the house, hey, I'm going to be doing this for a while. Those types of things. I think you got to think about a little bit more, especially if you're going to do virtual. But the thing I miss the most, and it's just everything virtual is got to be scheduled. It's got to be organized in some way, and I miss the randomness sometimes of just encountering, whoever, when you're walking around Moscone and you see somebody and you just want to go talk to them, or you just happen to see a group of people talking and you just go and join them and just listen or even contribute, like the randomness. It's a little hard. No one's really figured that out yet, I think, in the virtual conference world. I mean, I wish I could have gone to the VMUG party. I saw that platform seems kind of interesting, and I wonder if that's where it's going to go by this time next year, whenever the next conference is. I wonder if the technology will be there and we're going to just be interacting with each other in like this weird virtual gaming type world, attending things, interacting randomly to kind of recreate that experience. Either that or everyone's going to have VR headsets, which just
yeah.
So
yeah, that was the main topic of conversation we had on that first panel this morning was, how do we recreate that? And it is tough. And that to me is the main thing that we are really going to be challenged with is what I call the random encounters at a conference where, you're walking down the hallway, run into somebody. It's that after conversation you have after a breakout session with the speaker and they kick you out of the room and now all of a sudden it's a hallway conversation. Other people can join it. Those are definitely the pieces and parts that I will miss out on. And it sounds like most people are kind of in that same boat. So coming up in the last couple minutes, final question I wanted to ask you guys is, with VMworld going on, what all does Zerto have going on? What's the best way to engage with you and your colleagues during a virtual VMworld?
Well, we have a booth, a virtual one. So definitely join us there. We have many people manning it, and ask any question you want to ask. I actually saw one pop up from Discord, but unfortunately won't be able to answer it on this session. But please join us in our booth. We have a session. I'm trying to find the session code. I should have prepared that, but we have a session about Zerto 8.5, our vision on how you basically should protect your virtual environment with all the things that are happening nowadays, with all the things that are changing nowadays. So that's definitely something you should do. We're doing this, which actually I enjoyed very much. I know we're closing. But yeah, no, actually the session HCI H2970S, it's on demand. So you can watch it whenever you want. Please do give me feedback. It's all about how you can back up your entire environment every 5 seconds, which sounds a bit weird, but you can actually do it. I'm going to be online a lot, engaging with people, looking at the platform, and hopefully learn some cool stuff that we can use at ZertoCon Virtual as well.
Cool. Any parting thoughts from you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to be where I usually am in the Slack for VExpert and monitoring Twitter and kind of trying to keep up on all the announcements that are going to be coming through these next couple days. So you can gauge that way. And then I guess I got to start thinking a little bit differently because I'm so used to just those platforms and this whole thing about Discord. I mean, what was the whole thing? Jigsaw Discord. It was like, for a second there, I had a moment of like, what the heck is going on? Like what happens when you don't keep up with technology. And I thought I was pretty decent at that.
Yeah, my daughter made fun of me for not being part of Discord, and then I got on it, and she's like, ugh. So I think she's looking for a new platform that is newer and cooler than what Dad uses.
I know.
Cool. Well, lots of great opportunities for Zerto. Definitely give them a look. Like I said, in my day job, I do get to work with them, and it's an amazing product that has helped out many of our customers. So really appreciate you guys joining me for this. Glad you enjoyed it. I did as well. And special thank you to Zerto for supporting what we're doing this year, trying to get out the content in the community as much as possible. So we hope everyone takes care and look for more of our content. All can be found at vmunderground.com. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.